Which young player should you keep an eye on during Dallas Cowboys training camp? All that and more in this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. On today's show, we're going to be discussing 3 young players that you should be watching during Dallas Cowboys training camp. And then at the very end of the show, we're going to discuss the Michael Gallup retirement news. Make sure you guys stay tuned for that. But let's start with Caelen Carson, landing the Cowboys' 5th-round pick from Wake Forest, who I think a lot of people are excited about him potentially winning this 4th cornerback job. What do you think about Carson entering camp?
Yeah, it's an interesting guy. I mean, because he's really kind of a different sort of cornerback than the team has kind of drafted traditionally lately. He's not quite, the bigger body type that especially that Dan Quinn kind of preferred. But he's a guy that, as the stats, if you're watching on YouTube show, you're like, was a successful man coverage guy, like was kind of a physical, scrappy player. I mean, honestly, I think the player that he probably reminds me the most of coming out on the Cowboys is Jordan Lewis. And that's why I think he is really intriguing to me, is that he is kind of a different player. He got used a lot of different ways at Wake Forest, was definitely, the best player on their defense. And it was just a guy that, plays with a lot of attitude, is scrappy, is a heady player. And I think that is going to be a really useful guy, kind of in contrast with some of these other guys that they have, the sort of longer kind of silo cornerbacks that they have in Stokes and Wright, right? I think that Carson is a little bit more of a guy that I feel like you could reduce down inside, maybe play some slot. I think he'd probably be a good blitzer. He's physical. He's just, it's interesting to kind of get this guy and throw him into the cornerback room in the mix with the rest of these guys that he's going to be competing with, because he is, different than the rest of them. And I think that Zimmer is really going to find a way to kind of utilize him in very kind of interesting ways.
Yeah, I'm really excited about him too, because he projects as like an outside cornerback, because if you look at his size, and again, if you're watching with us on YouTube right now, you can see the size, just under 6 foot, just under 200 pounds, not overly fast, but you watch his game, he's incredibly tough. He's physical. He doesn't mind being to get up in some of the receivers' faces. I really like that part of his game. I do wonder, could he potentially be a slot cornerback in the NFL? Maybe that's something we're going to see Landon early on in camp. Is he somebody that could potentially kick inside and play in the slot, or is he only an outside cornerback? Because if he's only an outside cornerback, I do have some concerns that maybe it will take him a while before he's even active on game days. Maybe it's going to take him a while before he sees the field. But if he's somebody that the Cowboys view as having position flexibility and versatility, maybe he's just their backup slot corner, and he's the 4th cornerback on this team right away. That's why it's so intriguing to me. This is somebody I really like pre-draft. I can't wait to see how he looks in training camp against these receivers.
Yeah, but think about, Zimmer really puts a lot of emphasis, and I think even when we talked to Luke Braun, several months ago, it's been now, about Zimmer when he was coming on to the team, think about how Zimmer uses his slot corners. Like that's one of the most important positions in the Zimmer defense, right? And usually he wants, and I'll even go a step further. Think about all the cornerbacks that Zimmer went through drafting over the years, because they could not find the right guy to play corner for them, right? That position is just a really important position in the Zimmer defense. It does a lot more than just kind of cover guys out of the slot. It's a heavy blitzing position. It's a very big run support position. So you need a guy that's scrappy, that's smart, that's assignment sound to kind of play that position because of all the, you're in the middle of a lot of different things, in the middle of the passing game, in the middle of run support. Like I said, you're potentially a pass rusher as a blitzer. So having another one of these kind of, smart, scrappy guys, which is really kind of fits Carson's profile, reduced inside as a nickelback, I think is really going to be beneficial for the Cowboys. I agree with you. I think if he's, a guy that you're potentially thinking about keeping on the outside, there's going to be potentially some athleticism problems combined with his size. But if you're looking for a high floor player who, if you get him in the right situation and you can get him to avail himself of the skill set that he does have, right? And not much recognize the limitations he has, but instead recognize what he does well and then put him in a position to do those things over and over again. I do think that, he could be the heir apparent to Jordan Lewis on the slot inside, even if he doesn't have a ton of experience there, just by the kind of makeup of who the player is. Yep. I think that he is a guy that could potentially be a really good slot player for this team. And you mentioned fourth corner. There's going to be times when he gets spread out, and you're going to need a second slot corner on the field with you. So having a guy like this, like a physical guy who you could send on a blitz if you need to, he's not going to be afraid to, go waist high at a 225-pound running back to take him down. These are all positive things that the Cowboys, I think, needed in their cornerback room because they really had a very certain type of cornerback, and they were missing this sort of archetype that usually kind of plays in the slot as more physical, tough guy.
The other thing that I want to mention is you look at the Cowboys depth chart here, and if you listen to Friday's show, I made my roster predictions outside of their top three cornerbacks, Trayvon Diggs, Deron Bland, and Jordan Lewis. I mean, they just don't really have anybody who has proven. I mean, they don't even really have anybody who's played. I mean, Eric Scott did not play really at all last year. Caelen Carson is obviously a rookie. I mean, your Nahshon Wright has played some of the preseason, but not really a lot in the regular season. Like, there's just that. I feel like that fourth cornerback position is such a unknown.
Yeah.
But in a good way, in the sense, like, I can't wait to see who wins this battle. At the same time, because Trayvon Diggs is likely going to start on the PUP list, one of these guys is just going to be with the starters, and that's kind of terrifying right away.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to kind of throw these guys out there and see how they handle it, right? I mean, I think that's, if anything, that that's not the ultimate indication of where they're going to end up being, but I think it's a data point, right? Like, I think that it's a data point to see how well does this guy handle being thrown into the deep end without too much instruction, and if he handles it well, it's probably a good sign that once you actually start giving him the instructions he needs to play the position, that he's going to hold up well. But I mean, you said it, like, it's a lot like the linebacker position in some ways, except obviously a lot more settled at the top in the cornerback room. But in the sense that the Cowboys don't have a specific answer to who, cornerback 4 is on this team, but they have a lot of potential answers, right? It's about kind of getting into training camp and seeing, which one of these guys is going to grab that brass ring and then kind of take it into the regular season.
And again, I'll just feel better about this position once Trayvon Diggs comes back from his injury.
Yeah.
And again, maybe if none of these guys step up, maybe that's when you call Stephon Gilmore, or you call Xavier Howard, or whatever cornerback is out there that you want to bring in for more veteran help. But sure. I like the idea of Eric Scott, Nahshon Wright, Caelen Carson all getting a bunch of snaps in training camp in the preseason as they try to figure out that position. All right, let's go to the offensive side of the ball and talk about one of the biggest wild cards at the running back position, Deuce Vaughn. We will talk about him next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer that it gets to first pitch. And with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, and theater events near you. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. And save even more when you choose a section and let Gametime choose your exact seats. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Are you having to turn down the volume because of all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that unnecessary screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We also want to let you guys know that we will be going live after the training camp practices in a couple of weeks once Landon gets out to Oxnard, or Oxnard, as Jerry Jones calls it. So make sure that you are on the lookout for that. We'll give you exclusive details about practice, some observations that Landon sees, and of course, we'll be on Weight Watch with all of the important players. But later, let's talk about Deuce Vaughn, who not worried about weight here. Actually, he could bulk up. It would be fine.
Yeah.
What are we expecting from Deuce Vaughn in year 2?
Man, I mean, who knows, right? Like, I think that's really the issue is that, there's a lot of excitement, obviously, hype going into the season with seeing what Deuce Vaughn could do and all the talk about the small back and all that. And we get into training camp and he looks pretty good. There's some stuff there. But, kind of like what we talked about, I think it was yesterday on the show, it was hard to know without seeing people getting taken to the ground, right? Like, the issue, obviously, I don't think we need to explain this to anybody who's listening to this podcast, is that Deuce Vaughn is historically small. And I think, you're seeing it right now. If you're watching on YouTube, you see the RAS score that Math Bomb had created for this. And look at those numbers for height and weight. Like, he's literally in the 0.05 percentile of height and 0.39 percentile of weight. So, yeah, historically small player. And so obviously the clear issue, especially at running back, is how is he going to hold up? Is he going to be able to break any tackles? Is he going to be a functional running back? He's obviously historically explosive in college, was, one of the greatest running backs in Big 12 history, basically. But obviously the size is a real serious issue. And we all wondered how it would translate. Well, it looked fine in training camp. And then once we started getting to preseason games and to regular season games, and it was about live hitting and taking the ball down, he didn't have great success. I mean, I looking at the numbers for his regular season, he had 23 attempts for 40 yards, and that's 1.1 yards per carry. Like, that's not good, man.
It's not great.
That's not great. So, and the real thing that's kind of, I don't know, the unknown here is, I mean, can he improve on that? And what can he do to improve on that? Like, I just don't know. Like, the thing about Deuce Vaughn is that, his body felt, I mean, he's 5'5", like, how much more maxed out can his body get? Or, strong or explosive? Like, is that even a thing that he can do? So my question now becomes, like, what could he have done in the offseason to kind of make him not only a viable running back, but a running back that you would want to, feature during the regular season. And I think he showed us a little bit as a receiver in the screen game. I think there's something there, but you can't have a running back on your team who's just running a screen every 3 plays, especially for a guy that probably can't play a bunch of special teams. I mean, he's too small, right? So,
well, unless he's a returner, right?
Unless he's a returner. But I mean, again, like, I'm not ham-fisting Deuce Vaughn into a return role and forcing out someone like Turpin, who actually contributes on offense.
I mean, the good thing is for Deuce is that you're likely going to use more returners this year. Like you're
That's
likely
true.
going to see teams use 2 returners back there. But you're right. The only thing that would say for Deuce, where I think he could get dramatically better, is last year it felt like the game was a little too fast for him,
Maybe
right? Like
that's it. Yeah.
he was almost making moves too quick, and it would ended up, going right into a defender. Like maybe in year 2, he'll start to slow things down a little bit. The vision will be better, and he's not going to have to try to break as many tackles. But the issue is, whenever he's on the field, everybody knows what's going to happen, right? Like he is a space player. You're not going to run the ball with him inside. You're not going to run power stuff with him. He's not going to be a goal line back. So how valuable is that player if they don't have like elite speed? I mean, he's got good speed. Let's be clear, but it's not like 4.3. Hey, if he hits, there's a little gap, he's taking it 75 yards to the house. So this one, I'm really curious to see later. Like, how much better does he look? Does he look better at all? And is it clear, like 3 weeks into the camp, that this just isn't going to be a thing?
Well, I mean, the other part of the issue that's kind of figuring in here is that, one of the biggest holes on this team is a running back with juice. And
Yeah.
right now it feels like Deuce is the guy that they're putting all these eggs into his basket, right? And that's, a little troubling considering what we saw last year. I mean, just like, just compare him to the guy that was in this role the last few years in Pollard. I mean, Pollard was obviously more of a lead back last year, but I think, his general career through the Cowboys is something that I think that Vaughn should aspire to. And he just doesn't have the same, like he just doesn't have the same ability to break tackles the way that Pollard did, right?
No.
Like even with his feet and Pollard wasn't a big guy, but he was big enough that he could make you miss with his feet and then get by your arm tackle as he was getting past you. There were times when you're watching Vaughn run and he makes the move correctly, but then he can't, like he gets knocked down by a loose arm just because, guys, he's 5'5", 178 pounds, and he's playing against guys who are 6'6", 300 pounds. So, there's physics limitations here, right? Yeah. Like, and so my question is, like, how does he get around the actual physics of football better than he did last year?
That's why Darren Sproles' career will always be so impressive to me. Being 5'6" and being able to play that long and have over like 10,000.
The power in his lower body was just,
and that's just what Deuce doesn't have. And maybe we'll see in camp, he added 35 pounds to his lower body. Like that would be awesome, but pretty unlikely. Just really quickly, let's look at the running back depth chart here for the Cowboys going in to training camp. I made my backfield predictions. I had Rico Dowdle, Ezekiel Elliott, Hunter Lipke. I had
got the roster cut. I love it. It's awesome.
Yeah, well, I feel like the 4 spot, Deuce Vaughn, is the one that's really up for grabs. Mm-hmm. It's either going to be Deuce Vaughn or somebody on a different roster. I feel like it's clear they need somebody that's. You look at Dowdle, Zeke, and Hunter Lipke. Like Zeke might be the smallest of the 3 running backs, right?
Yep.
You need somebody that has some kind of juice and some kind of speed. They want Vaughn to earn that role, but if it's not Vaughn, I gotta believe it's going to go out and be somebody else.
They're definitely giving him tons of runway. My question is, and I hate to be like this, are they giving him all that runway because they saw a lot of improvement in the offseason? They're giving him another shot, or are they giving him all that runway because he's the son of a scout?
Well, and that's one of the issues when you draft a player that has ties to the family, right? It makes it a little bit more difficult to cut. Not that the Cowboys couldn't cut him, but it makes it harder. Let's just say that.
It makes it awkward at the very least, right? Like it was such a feel-good story, and to see him turn around and get cut the next year would be tough. But I mean, again, that's why you don't do that stuff.
Yep.
So you don't have to put yourself in situations like that.
All right, let's talk about a rookie receiver for the Cowboys that will be trying to make the 53-man roster. Let's talk about Ryan Flournoy next. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We are discussing 3 young players to keep an eye on during Dallas Cowboys training camp this year. And let's go to Ryan Flournoy, the Cowboys day 3 wide receiver, who is a heck of an athlete. What do you want to see from him in camp this year?
So precision, just like kind of, I want to see him running routes with confidence and with not kind of hesitancy. This is a guy that, look, I mean, he is Southeast Missouri State. You see the Raz right here, extreme athlete. I mean, I think the archetype is, and he's not the same pedigree, but I would say the same archetype, similar to Dez Bryant. Just that kind of explosive, strong, athletic player who can jump out of the gym, can run really fast, is difficult to bring down with when he has the ball in his hands. Has big hands, but he has got a long way to go as far as trying to put it all together. Right, like as far as being a reliable receiver, being precise. I think he was given a selection of routes at Southeast Missouri State so that they could get him the ball consistently. But I don't know that he necessarily was given a lot of instructions on how to be a guy that creates separation or how that has a lot of natural ability to win with his route running. I think that's where we're looking for some improvement and just like the skill aspect of his game. I mean, I think athletically, like I said, you see a guy who certainly feels like he could belong, certainly looked like he belonged at the Senior Bowl. But I think when you kind of get into some of the professionals who are precise and get into the detail aspect of it, that they'll be able to kind of take away a lot of his athletic ability with their technique, and that's where he needs to learn to counter that. Is learn to be just more precise in his route running, and again, I think that the other thing that was showed in there is that for being a big guy who goes up and has big hands, and like I said, I compared him to Dez Bryant. His contested catch percentage is very low. And not that should be a main aspect of his game, because that's not something that you should build your game around necessarily, but it's something that you would like to see him improve, because he does have the physical ability to kind of be good there. And I think it's probably a concentration issue.
Yeah, I just would mention his athleticism really quickly. 6'1", 202 pounds. We're in a 4.44 40-yard dash. 11-foot broad jump, nearly a 40-inch vertical. Like, we are talking about a special athlete at the wide receiver position.
Yeah.
It's just how far away is he from actually contributing? I think the goal for Ryan Flournoy is if he can make the 53-man roster, I think that would be a huge win as a rookie. Unfortunately, Landon, I think that's going to be tough. In my early roster predictions, I only have them keeping 5 receivers: CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks, Jalen Tolbert, Jalen Brooks, Kavontae Turpin. One of the reasons why is I have them keeping 4 tight ends, and maybe John Stevens kind of acts as like one of your wide receivers.
Yeah.
He's going to have to beat out some really good other players at other positions if he's going to want to make the 53-man roster. Not saying it couldn't happen, but it's certainly going to be an upward climb for him.
Yeah, I think we've talked about it a little bit, but frankly, spots 3 through 5 on this depth chart for the wide receiver room are very well locked in at this point. For as much complaining as a lot of people have made about the Cowboys wide receiver room, I think that there's already a consensus on who's going to be 3 through 5, and I think the Cowboys and people that are in the know feel pretty good about those 3 guys, or at least about where they're going. So adding Flournoy into this, and if he wants to become a game day roster guy or a guy that's on the roster that maybe doesn't dress out. He's going to need to really show out, like you said, and potentially, because he's probably not going to beat any of these 5 guys, right?
No.
Even Kevontae Turpin, who is the least receiver of these receivers, he has a very strong role on this team. So it'll be hard to just watch him from that role. So
yeah,
I agree. I think if yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah. And so I think that Flournoy is really, like you said, going to need to show out so much that he's going to have to, dip into, the Cowboys are going to need to dip into another spot to kind of remove a guy in order to keep him. Otherwise, I think, likely he will be a practice squad guy who, maybe eventually you call up near the end of the year as he starts to develop a little bit more and things kind of go well for you. I think that would be a good role for him, just to kind of help him develop, throughout the season. And then, maybe as the end of the season approaches, he's reached a level that you can, kind of put him on the game day roster, put him out there, have him run some routes and see how it goes.
All right, the last thing I wanted to talk about today, and this kind of ties into Ryan Flournoy, but Michael Gallup officially retired on Tuesday night, only at the age of 28. He signed a 1-year deal with the Raiders. I think it became pretty clear that he wasn't going to make their 53-man roster, and he decides to walk away from the game. Landon, I loved watching Michael Gallup.
Mm-hmm.
Prime Michael Gallup in 2019 was so much fun. What was your favorite Michael Gallup memory during his career in Dallas?
I'm just going to say that I liked my favorite thing about Michael Gallup, and there are lots of plays. I mean, the guy was a toe touch king. I mean, he could go up and get the ball and come down with it near the sideline as well as anybody I can remember. Honestly, during those few years when he was at his peak, he just was, when you had a team that featured Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, he was still the guy that was, you felt like if you needed a clutch play or you had to get a throw to the sideline in which, you could get a tight coverage and a throw up ball, go up and get ball, you knew that Michael Gallup was going to be able to go up there and get it. And he burst onto the scene in such a surprising way for being such, I think a 4th round pick. But my favorite part about Michael Gallup, without a doubt, is who he is, right? Like just watching him being interviewed, just watching him talk. He just seems like a really good, nice person. And he genuinely seemed to be enjoying his time when he was here. And I'm hoping that he's going to enjoy his time when he retired. Like, I don't know if people remember, but when he got drafted, it was just not too long after his brother had recently committed suicide. And like,
it was after his first year.
Yeah. And his attitude and joy and his ability to kind of celebrate his brother without letting it get him down. Like, I just really respect his approach to things and the way he views, hard work and difficulty. He faces things with a smile. He was never dour, even when things weren't good. And even when, and he was being interviewed after a loss, he kept a good perspective on things. He just seemed like a really good person and a good person to be around. And I hope with all my heart that he really, really enjoys retirement, because he's one of the few, I feels like, truly good people in the NFL. And I hope that he gets to, kick his feet up and really enjoy the money he's earned. Because I think, he's a good person. It's good to see good people make good earnings.
He was so easy to root for. I mean, like, it didn't take long at all before you just kind of fell in love with his personality. And you mentioned, even when things got hard from him in 2021, 22, and 23, never complained. There were times where he was getting phased out of the offense. There would be weeks where he would only get 1 or 2 targets because, CeeDee Lamb would go crazy, or Amari Cooper would have a big game, like back in 2021. Yeah. Never heard a peep about it, right? He just went out there, did his role. His last game in the NFL was that playoff game, obviously against the Packers. 6 targets, 6 catches, 103 yards. He was the best receiver on the field in that game. So I understand why he's retiring. It's a bummer, but congratulations, Michael, on a great career. It was a blast to watch him play.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. We'll see you a little bit further down the trail, and we appreciate all the good times.
All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. We post videos every single day over there. Go download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. You can follow in and on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.